This winter, we're visiting Christmas markets across Europe, and I brought the Insta360 X4 to help document it. Now, this is a sponsored video, so it's not a review. I just want to show you some of the best use cases I found for it, and the coolest one was documenting our photo shoots behind the scenes. Without any extra gear or tripods, I can just mount this to the cameras, and it looks awesome. Now, I'm sure you've seen some Insta360 footage. It's hard to miss, it looks pretty distinctive. And right now you can see I'm just like wirelessly feeding it to my phone, and you have a crazy amount of flexibility with it. A lot of the time people just use it for walking around shots. So I was doing that in the Christmas markets, right? I put it on one of the Insta360 invisible selfie sticks, raise it up in the air, and it just looks like there's a third person camera following you around. Super cool, interesting way to film yourself. But generally, I like to be a little more intentional with my shots, so I don't need to spend too long reviewing footage in the edit. Like, each shot should have a purpose later on. So what I found it most useful for are these behind the scenes types of moments. Now I'm going to show you how I set it up. First of all, some of the basic settings. The color profile I always prefer is flat. It's not quite log, but it does offer the opportunity to do some color grading later in post. Just a bit more flexibility, holds onto the highlights more. Then in terms of actual resolution, during the daytime I'd set it to 8K, and in lower light I'd set it to 5.7K. And I almost forgot to do this partway through. Change it to 25 frames per second if you're in Europe. I was shooting it at 30 for a little while, so I might have some flickering Christmas lights. 25, we'll fix that where I am. So just think about where it is you're filming from. And then I did have it mostly in automatic mode, although I would change the white balance manually occasionally. I found that helpful. And there are two different perspectives. You can have kind of the like regular, action cam, like wide angle like this, which also has a lot of use cases, but you don't get nearly the flexibility. So I was generally using it in full 360 mode so I could look in every single direction later. Figured out a few good ways to mount the Insta360 to cameras, because I don't want to have a stand or any other accessories, so I can get behind the scenes really easily, but there's a few things not to do as well. So first of all, you're going to need something to mount it with. This is just a little monitor mount I happen to have in my camera bag. It's got a cold shoe on the bottom and a screw thread on top, and I just screw it into the bottom. I'll leave a link in the description below for an easy one. This one's actually not quite perfect, but it gets the job done. I made a mistake at first and actually just mounted it to the hot shoe on my camera and kind of left it sitting straight up and down. Now, this works, you'll get the shot, but it does cut off whatever's right below the Insta360. This is the invisibility spot, so you'll kind of get a weirdly cut off camera. There's two other angles that I found were a lot more interesting. First of all, is just tilting it forward. This gives you a big perspective of your lens, and also you can still see yourself, and it doesn't make the camera look quite as broken. There's always going to be something that gets cut off in the 360 circle, but I did find this to be a great balance. What was also really cool is that it worked whether I was shooting a horizontal photo or if I rotate vertically. The Insta360 always has a sense of the horizon and is kind of just correcting for me, so I can cut in whichever footage I want based on how I was holding the camera. I don't know of any other camera that's going to do that for me. The other good one is the opposite. If I just tilt it backwards and then I flip out my flip screen, I can get this perspective of exactly what I'm seeing through the lens, like seeing Anya recording me right now. But I basically found myself just flipping back and forth by tilting it forwards and backwards depending on the moment and trying to get a variety of both. Now, the other way I set this up is a little dependent on the gear you have with you. I kind of always have a camera backpack attachment here. This one is from Falcam. And simply putting the Insta360 on top of the camera that's mounted there, I mean, it looks a little crazy. It's clearly sticking way out from my body, but it actually gets a pretty good perspective. So like right now I could do behind the scenes of like the camera all the way to Anya over here, and you really can see everything in it. Like, it's a pretty crazy angle. So these two mounts give you a ton of variety, and I'm not carrying anything extra. It's also weird, like, I'm very self-aware as I stand here that it's very jiggly, it's moving a lot, but the stabilization in the 360 just totally seems to take all that out. It's kind of magic, and I don't have to think about where the camera is pointed. I can just focus on where the primary camera is pointed while I'm taking photos. Now, one more thing not to do, you can see that I mounted this sideways because at first, again, I was making a mistake in mounting it forward, just like I had it on this camera. That puts the blind spot right at the horizon of where my camera is, so there is more sort of glitchy moments compared to if you mount it sideways. You get a lot more of like the right part of the frame is what is looking optimal. By the way, if you're somebody that feels like you never need to shoot in 8K, 8K is overkill, you wouldn't need that, keep in mind for 360 video, you're always seeing only a portion of the image. So having way more megapixels is exactly the way you want to shoot. So you can pan in any direction and still have maximum resolution. There's a few accessories that'll really help with your 360 shooting. One that I think is essential is the invisible selfie stick. This might just look like a normal selfie stick, but it actually disappears. Everything that's directly underneath the camera becomes invisible once you're shooting. Then there's the little rubber lens cap, so when you throw it in the bag, you know that it's gonna be safe. And this is especially important on these 360 lenses because they're exposed, right? You have to keep them very clean to keep your image looking sharp. But if you really wanna have fun, I recommend getting the extra long selfie stick. This is up to 3 meters. So if you're somewhere that doesn't allow drones, well, let's take a look at some of the videos that I already shot and see how it works. So once you're looking at a clip you like, first you gotta set the resolution that you're gonna be working in. So this will be for YouTube, so I'm gonna set it to 16:9. It really does kind of change the shape of the frame, which one you're looking at. I don't know how it projection maps this footage. It's crazy to me, but let's hit play, take a look at what we've got here. So I mean, I don't know, this just blows me away. Like Anya is pretty far away from me here. She's like 15 feet away. And in the final footage, it just like, you can see where she is and where I am in the relationship of the shoot as we're going. And it's just amazing to me. Like I can change this perspective as we go. So if I wanted to, I could cut from close-ups of me and then switch that to just my perspective and just show what Anya's doing. There's a lot of ways to move this together. Now, what you can do is add keyframes. So like I was saying, there's 2 different perspectives, right? I could have a keyframe there, move forward, then look back at me, add another keyframe, and as the video plays, Insta360's app is automatically going to make that camera move for me, which is really cool. Like I absolutely appreciate that. What I also like to do is export 2 different versions from each perspective and then cut it more traditionally. It's a little easier for me to work that way. I kind of know what the angles are and I can cut between them in my regular video editing software. It is helpful to first trim down your footage to the parts you're going to use. So like this is a 1-minute clip and I probably don't want all of it. So I'm just going to kind of take the middle section, trim to that so that I don't have to export quite as much footage. And before you export, make sure to set the resolution based on what you're going to use. So if it's vertical video for social media, 1080, 30 frames per second, totally fine. That's the most that it'll support anyway. But for YouTube, I definitely want to crank this all the way up to 4K. And bitrate, yeah, I'm gonna keep that high. I'm gonna turn it to, 50. 50 seems pretty safe for color grading. And then I just hit save to album and it exports the file to my phone. And while that exports, the way that I like to keep this going all day is you can see it's in sleep mode right now, like the screen's not on. If I just tap the power button, it'll come back to life. And then I can just start recording again right away. I just find this a super helpful way to work because then the battery lasts longer, but you're ready to capture anything at any time. Also, I was showing all the settings on the phone, but a lot of that is available through the menus. I don't know if I can navigate them backwards here, but you can set everything that you need to on this large screen display, and you can preview what you're shooting with this big touch screen. All the settings you need are available here. I just find them a little more clear to find in the phone, but it's definitely simple to also set them right inside the camera. Now, if you want to see what we're actually shooting here, I recommend following Anya on Instagram @AnyaB because that's where most of it will get posted. These Christmas markets were amazing. There was a lot to see. We went to France, Germany, Denmark. All of it was amazing, and I highly recommend it as a way to spend Christmas. Now, if you've shot a lot of footage and you don't necessarily have time to go through it, There is AI editing, so let's say we're gonna do something like that for social media. I'm just gonna tap AI up at the top, and it's gonna start chewing through all of the footage and cut it into the interesting parts and use a few different camera angles. This can really save you time, like if you don't want to be doing it yourself. And I find the worst thing is if you buy a camera and then don't end up going through the footage because there's too much of it. Find some quick way to edit it down and you're way more likely to watch it later. And also keep in mind that the full quality isn't available until you have actually exported the clip. It's always showing you a preview as you're in the edit mode. But I'm gonna export this 16:9, looks good, save it to my phone. Right now, the X4 is 15% off, and that's its lowest price ever. If you use my link in the description, you're also gonna get a free accessory with your purchase. Adding an Insta360 to your camera bag gives you a ton of extra flexibility in a really small package. There are so many ways you can shoot with it. So thanks again to Insta360 for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.